Thank you for joining us here at Time. Thank you for coming to the Time 100 Women's Leadership Forum. We are very proud at Time to be at a company that is women-owned and women-led, and we're really proud to have this conversation tonight, joined by 4 extraordinary women, including some of our Women of the Year, a Latino leader, and Time 100s. Thank you for being here. We had Valerie Jarrett on this stage earlier tonight. She is a little bit excited for the debate this evening.
You are the person keeping everyone from the debate. We know that as you all sit here, that we are the force of nature keeping you from the debate. So we are going to abide by the rules of the clock.
I was going to say, Kerry, you are the person keeping them.
No. You're in charge of this conversation.
All right, well, let's start with the debate. We have 4 really talented communicators and analysts of modern politics tonight. You all come from different perspectives, different experiences. I'd love to hear, Kerry, starting with you, or we can go with you last if you're worried about that. What will you be listening for tonight?
Oh, that's so interesting. What will I be listening for? I think what I'm going to be listening for is after the debate. I'm going to be listening for what people hear. I'm really curious what people take away from tonight, because I know that there will be someone up there who makes a lot of sense, and another person. And I'm just very curious about how the media will spin a narrative about it. You know, how critical we will be of the person who makes a lot of sense, how lacking in critique we may be in the other person, or if things surprise me and that's not what happens. I'm curious about how audiences perceive the debate tonight. Because I know where I stand, I know what I believe. I may hear things that surprise me, but I'm really, really curious about kind of what the cultural conversation is after the debate.
Angela, you're working on a grassroots level, connecting with voters in Milwaukee. What do you think they'll be listening for? What will you be listening for tonight?
Yeah, what we've heard from folks is people are like, I don't know much about the vice president, so I'm curious to see more about where she stands. Does she separate herself from the current administration? I think people generally have an idea of where they're gonna fall in terms of how they're just like consuming the candidates. I think people have these preconceived notions of who the candidates are. But I think some of our folks that we've talked to that are talking to folks in the community all day, every day are like, yeah, cool, she's vice president. I don't know much about her and how she would lead as president. So I think people are looking for some of those tangible policy things. Things like, I'd be remiss if I didn't even mention that we are on the heels of the 30-year anniversary of the '94 crime bill. I do work in the most incarcerated zip code, and so I think people are going to be looking of how she kind of maybe reconciles her past with that, and especially a lot of young people are looking to see stances around Gaza as well.
Maria, Teresa?
Yeah, so first of all, I think that we will try to be efficient with your time, but I have to, full disclosure, I've had the privilege of knowing the vice president when Voto Latino started, when she was a DA, and I think that what makes her so unique is that she's always been accessible to big ideas that are making transformational change. And one of the things I'm looking for is very much the punditry. Are you going to give her flowers that she is actually the most elected person in a minute? She has been the second highest officer of the land when it came to Attorney General of California. She has been able to understand that incarceration is hard, but also recognizing what happens when you have low-level offenses and marijuana offenses, and transforming California and doing that. Oftentimes people ask, well, where has she been? And then we actually have receipts. She broke the tie for CHIP, for the IRA, for the American Leave Rescue Plan, and the list goes on. Had it not been for her, there wouldn't be close to $32 billion in student loan forgiveness. You wouldn't have lowered access to insulin costs to $35. And so are we going to give her flowers, not because she's a woman or a woman of color or of immigrant descent? All of that is beautiful, but she's an actual public servant of over 30 years.
Sherrilyn?
these are not debates, and so I'm not
Like
really.
when you ground that.
They're really
Level
not.
set.
And so I think what's important is that every time Vice President Harris makes an appearance as we head towards the opening of election season, it is an opportunity for her to bypass the noise and talk directly to the public to answer those questions that you're suggesting people have, but also to demonstrate that she can't be shaken off her game, which is honestly the tactic of both her opponent and very often the press. And so I think what people are looking for tonight, in addition to learning more about her and where she stands on a variety of issues, is to get a sense of her poise, to get a sense of her ability to withstand what are going to be the headwinds. If you remember, when President Obama was elected, Mitch McConnell has admitted that, on inauguration night, he had a meeting with fellow Republicans in which they decided to try to make President Obama as unsuccessful as possible and a one-term president. So we should presume that she is going to face headwinds regardless of whether or not the Democrats win the House and the Senate. There is going to be a very strong Republican caucus that is trying to undermine her presidency. So we need to see her ability to withstand the distraction, her ability to withstand those who try to shake her off of her game. I don't think anybody's watching to see what Trump is going to say, except like you watch a TV show, like how outrageous will he be tonight. But I don't think anyone expects to learn anything from him. And so I think it's really an opportunity for her to just speak, as she should, directly to the American people.
To see her reaction to him, right?
That's right.
Yes,
That's
That's right.
How poised, the grace,
I mean,
the
'cause
resilience.
let's be honest, as a black woman, she can't say some of the things. She can't react the way that we may want to react. And so I think people are interested in those dynamics.
Angela, are there things she can say because of her identity that may be a different
Oh, I
thing
think
they
so.
couldn't?
Yeah, and I also think that we have been through the experience of President Obama, who, always was even-keeled and didn't rise to the bait. He didn't rise to the bait with "you lie." He asked for the beer summit. He did all kinds of things to try to tamp down the anxiety of white people in dealing with him. And I think that experience has taught us a lot. I think we also have experienced a president who is nakedly racist and white supremacist. And I don't think there's any expectation that Vice President Harris should ignore anything that sounds in that. So I think there are some things that she can say, and I think it's figuring out how to tack and to calibrate that so that she's honest, so that she's taking us another level where we need to go in this country and having honest conversations about race, but also doesn't put off people who want to feel that she is the president for everyone and that she doesn't have a narrow agenda. So it's a tightrope, but she's been doing that her entire 30-year career, so I feel actually quite comfortable that she'll know how to navigate this.
I think the other thing that's really important about tonight is something that she's also done her entire career, which is keep the focus on the people. That she has spent her entire career saying Kamala Harris for the people, and that for her, we the people it's not a vague 3 first words of the Constitution. She really means it. She believes in a multi-ethnic, multi-generational, very truly diverse, inclusive representational government. And that's what she wants to stand for. That's what she wants to support. And I think a lot of her message, and I hope we hear this tonight, is about how much power we have to change the country. That it's not up to one person to make all these changes, that democracy is not a spectator sport. This is a moment where we all have to get in the game.
Well, what you told Katie Couric at the Women of the Year event we had a few years ago was that we all have to realize that we are the Olivia Popes of our own families
It's true.
and our own communities.
Without the
Yeah.
wardrobe.
How do we do that?
Yes, well, okay, so I think that's because a lot of times when there's a moment of crisis in this country, I go on social media and everybody's like, you gotta fix this. And I want to say to people, no, you have to fix this because Olivia Pope is not a real person. Olivia Pope can't vote. She can't knock on doors. She can't volunteer. She can't donate money to campaigns because she doesn't actually exist. I'm so sorry to say. We as people, all of us, each one of us has the power to transform culture and democracy in our participation. So one of the things for me, because I realized, okay, I have this incredible light on me because of Olivia Pope. How do I turn that light toward the real superheroes, right? And so that's how I met Angela, actually, is because I do this work working with the Movement Voter Fund. We have created a VIP cohort, which is Vision into Power cohort, where we are working with incredible grassroots organizers to uplift the work that they are doing around democracy building. So I can say, it's not about me, it's not about her, it's about you and your communities, because this isn't about hero worship, right? I understand that people are in love with Olivia Pope, but I don't need people to be in love with Olivia Pope. I don't even need people to be in love with Kamala Harris. I need people to be in love with themselves and their families and their communities enough to show up and vote and volunteer.
Kerry, I want to follow on that idea of love. Angela, there's a quote that you use often, I think, in your work and you've written about, and you say someone once told you, you can't organize black people if you don't love black people.
Ooh.
How do you bring love to your work?
I love that question. I think a lot of it is rooted in joy, in understanding these really, really dark times. I refuse to let the patriarchy and white supremacy kill me and or my joy. And so for me, it's making sure that the team, who I love dearly, feels that love. They feel connected to the work. And I think that allows folks to have more meaningful conversations. I've unfortunately been a part of transactional organizations that you can tell they were just knocking because they were trying to extract as many black votes as possible, but they actually did not care about those people. And if you do that type of organizing, it will actually not work. Because guess what? Our community is smart enough to see through that.
Yeah, you only come here every 4 years. Why don't I see you in between, right? Like people know, people feel it.
When we first started knocking doors in November, Wisconsin weather, in November of 2017, people are like, no, what are you here for? Like, what do you really want? And we're like, no, you're going to get annoyed with us because we are going to reach out to you so much, not just voting, but making sure that we're seeing our community as full people, sending out things like Wellness Wednesday texts. So we're not just talking to our community when we want to engage around elections, we're engaging year round, making sure that people know that we care about their issues. And I think when that is rooted in the joy of the community, that level of organizing goes from transactional to transformative.
When you think about leading a meaningful conversation, yes, please. Maria, Teresa, you're also leading a meaningful conversation about what Latino voters want, what they deserve. I'm curious, what are we getting wrong in the media? When you encounter people, what are we misunderstanding about what Latino voters want?
So the fun thing is that Voto Latino is 20 years young this year, and I've had the privilege of working with all of you on the stage in some capacity, whether it's access to the voting booth, whether it's really learning about grassroots organizing and paying it forward. And the reason that Voto Latino has been successful is that in 2010, the census said that Latinos were going to be the second largest demographic of Americans, but the majority of us were under the age of 18. And so from the very beginning, we became digital natives. You guys can't laugh, but we started on MySpace. And like way back. And it was understanding that young Latinos were navigating America for their families long before they turned 18 years old. They were the cultural bridge builders. And so we recognized their agency and leadership in a way that their teachers and clergy could not quantify. And I'm proud to say that when we started in 2004, we registered 2,400 folks. In the last election, we registered 650,000 folks. And I'm sitting on stage right now, and we're on track to register another 500,000. And we do it at the margins. We go where they are. We're not afraid to ask. Right now, where you ask, where are they? Where they're on Chispa, on social media, dating apps. We're there. We're talking to them. Because we start off as your cool older sister, and once you're registered, we become your loving, endearing, nagging aunt who will literally keep texting you and calling you and knocking on your door until you finally vote. And you're like, finally, tía, ya, suficiente. But what do they care about? One of the things that, and this is, I think, what makes really the ticket so unique. Back in April, we found that the number one issue that young Latinos, 18 to 29-year-olds, were combating was housing. As it relates to budgeting, and this is a quote from a 22-year-old baggage claim young man in Phoenix, Arizona, down to the, I don't know if I can afford my rent so that I could have 1 meal or 2 meals a day. This is what this generation is struggling with.
In this country.
In this country.
It's insane.
And so one of the things that, the reason that the Harris campaign 2 weeks ago talked about housing and building more housing is that she was directly responding to what young African Americans and young Latinos and young people in general are dealing with. It wasn't the single mother in her 30s, it was young people right now trying to feed themselves while paying good working jobs, and she recognizing that. And as we move forward, there's going to be a lot of headlines that about how Latinos are going right. They weren't. I will tell you that in April, what we found was that a good 17% of them were going independent, and that was actually taking off from the Democratic ticket. So 47 were Biden, 38 were Trump, and 17% were third party. As of 2 weeks ago, 60% are Kamala Harris. 29% are Trump, and 7% are independent. What surprised us that in deep battleground states in North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, young people and Latinos as a whole were leaving Trump for the Kamala Harris message of unity, financial stability, and recognizing that there could be a new day. And so our job now is to continue giving them that information so they can mobilize, because what you said, it is about us. And one of the things, if you were to ask me like why we're here, is that what we have normally done is that we vote and then we let someone else do the business. But the efficacy of the Biden-Harris is that not only did they work, but then they brought many of us on this stage into the White House and says, what is it that the community needs? And they're paying attention. Yeah. And so what do we need? We need to finish the agenda. But that means that we need to be present, because people say, well, voting doesn't work. No, voting works for the people who participate. So our job is to occupy the voting booth, and then occupy the halls of the Senate, occupy the halls of Congress, and occupy all the way down so that they can continue having the courage to do the people's business.
Sherrilyn, I have to confess, over the course of the summer, I was thinking a lot about a conversation you and I once had, and you may remember why. It took Joe Biden a long time to decide when it was the right time for him to step down and to step out of this race. And one of the things we've talked about, and I suspect you've had this conversation with lots of people, was your own thinking process about stepping back from the NAACP Leadership Fund and the challenge of leaders knowing when it's time to make space for the next generation of leaders. And so I know you've talked about the president's decision, but on a broader term, how do you think about that for all the leaders in this room, that responsibility and the challenge around knowing when it's time to turn a page, as we've done, I guess, in this election, but how to prepare other people in your own organization for that moment?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your asking that. I am firmly of the belief that planning for succession is part of leadership. And if you don't do it, then you have not been an effective leader. That's my belief. And I would say, even though Joe Biden did not want to step down from being the candidate, you will note that the person that he prepared is prepared, which means he did the leadership job of preparing a successor, of treating the vice president like a real partner, ensuring that she had a real portfolio, ensuring that she was able to travel around the world and meet people all over, ensuring that she sat in on every meeting so that she could become more familiar with the things that she didn't know, being able to rely on her experience and knowledge. People forget that when Vice President Harris was in the Senate, she sat on both the Senate Judiciary Committee, which many people know because you saw her questioning of Justice Kavanaugh and Bill Barr and others, but she also sat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, which means that she has been seeing these classified briefings about what is happening around the world for quite some time. And so she was a real partner. And so I want to credit him with that. And I think for all of us, and honestly, especially in nonprofit organizations, you know, we can't keep starting over. You know, you can't stay until the wheels come off and you have nothing left, and then we hit the reset button and do a nationwide search and start a whole new person. You know, I just don't believe in that. I believe our organizations are so precious that we have to be bringing along with us people who can succeed us. Maybe they won't be selected to succeed us, but it is our job to seed that simply because we can't afford to start over. And what's interesting is corporations don't. You know, whoever is the CEO of Clorox, they know who's the next person already, right? They plan that stuff out. And we kind of don't do that. We keep it all in a black box. And I think it weakens us, and we don't have the assets to keep that process moving over and over again. But I would say this is also true in politics. And I think we have to be much more attentive to this. I do think that we have a gerontocracy problem in politics of people staying on too long. But you know, people learn what they inherited from those who came before them. These folks learned, you know, from the generation of the Strom Thurmonds and the Robert Byrds and the people who stayed on forever. That was seen as a way to get power. And I think what on the other side of this election, after Vice President Harris becomes president, which she will, is understanding that we have a unique opportunity to make transformative change around things. We should be thinking about seniority as the way to achieve power in the House or the Senate, and whether there are other pathways for those who are elected.
Or the Supreme Court.
We cannot have that reform, though. So here's the thing.
Yep.
Unless, and Maria Teresa said something very important, the most important thing about this election, if we believe that we're going to send Vice President Harris to the presidency and magic is going to happen, I'm so tired of the magical thinking about democracy. Yes. I do need people to learn how their government works. And we have a tripartite system of government. And unfortunately, it's broken in almost every measure. But we can't change anything without legislation, which means we have to have the House and the Senate. We can't do Supreme Court reform. That is not something that a president can do by presidential fiat, by executive order. It is Congress, in accordance with our Constitution, that has the power to decide how many Supreme Court justices there will be, what the jurisdiction of those officers will be, what kind of financial remuneration they'll get, how many clerks they can hire. That all rests with Congress. So if you're planning to elect Vice President Harris as president, but you're planning to keep Mitch McConnell as leader of the Senate, then you're not actually involved in thinking seriously about transformational change. If you think you're going to elect Vice President Harris and now your school system is going to be, transformed, well, yes, in terms of finances and budget, that is true, and the bully pulpit of the presidency. But if you're not voting in those school board elections, then your kids aren't going to be able to read Toni Morrison books, right? So if you're not going up and down that ticket, if you're not voting in the sheriff election, when I'm doing poll watching in Alabama on election day and getting thrown off of polling places and so forth, and the person that I have to call if there's a problem at the polls is the probate judge. Because in Alabama, the probate judge is the person who is empowered to deal with elections. So if you're coming into the voting booth and you're just going down and you're saying, I'm going to vote for the governor, I'm going to vote for the senator, I'm going to vote for my mayor, but then when it gets to the judges, and you don't vote in the probate judge election, but then you want to say something about the fact that the polls were closed or they didn't have the power cords or the lines were too long, or you've got to get really serious about how democracy works. And it works from the top. The top's very important. But it works all the way to the bottom. And so my mantra has been, leave no power on the table. All the power we've left on the table all these years, those who are opponents have picked up. That's why they're running the school boards. They didn't do anything illegal to run the school boards. We left it to them. We didn't run, we didn't vote, and we didn't show up at the meetings, right? So what I'm hoping on the other side of this, when we get a little breathing room by having a president committed to the people and committed to democracy, is that we will have the breathing room to make real change. And that means working through these other organs so that the president has a bill they can sign that can make change. But the president is not a legislature. She can't pass a bill. A bill has to be passed in Congress, come to her, and she can sign it. And so I just hope she can sign it. And so I just hope that everyone has enough energy and engagement to not do magical ballot casting, but to really become involved.
But
So I think-
go ahead. So I want to say I want to give Sherrilyn her flowers and her applause all day long. I also want to say that every single one of us who's clapping in this room, I want you to really ask yourself what more you can do right now. There's less than 60 days. When you're thinking local, are you thinking about grassroots organizations in the states that are gonna matter most and how you can contribute to those organizations? If you need to know who they are, you can go to Simpson Street Impact, which is our account that has a list of tons of organizations. Are you phone banking? Are you donating? Are you reaching out to organizations like Voto Latino? Are you thinking of how you can support the campaign and also support the people on the ground in the grassroots who are doing this work day after day and who are gonna do it after November? Also, are you level setting with people so that, as you heard Sherrilyn earlier say, election season, not election day? We need to start having the conversation with people that this is not going to be decided on election night. We have to be aware that we might have to wait a little bit longer because of how the system is working right now to adjust people's expectations so that we are prepared to stay steady and stay strong. There's a lot of important work and important conversations happening. So I love the applause, and I'm not trying to shame anybody. I'm asking the same thing of myself. Like, we need to be asking ourselves in this limited time, what more can I do?
Could you read your
So
ballot
one thing-
questions? That would be a great thing. You know how
So-
there are ballot questions on the ballot? Could you read them before you get in the voting booth? Because you taking 15 minutes to read the constitutional amendment or whatever, and there are many of them related to abortion on the ballot this year.
Yes.
You taking that 15 minutes to read that thing is part of what causes lines. So get yourself prepared to vote. Know before you go in all of the races, the people that you want to vote for, the issues that are on the ballot, and where you stand on them. This is not just wake up and be American and go in the voting booth. This is prepare like it's an exam for democracy.
Maria Teresa.
Maria
So,
Teresa.
yeah. So I will share with you, I think that the way we win in November is that we have to overwhelm them at the voting booth. Overwhelm them so that there is no question that there was a landslide election that got this to be. And the way we do that is that we need to focus on young people because they are the biggest opportunity. There's going to be close to 42 million Gen Zers and young millennials, I say young because they're under 35, that are eligible, bigger than the baby boomers. I'll give you an example. In Arizona, Biden won that state with 10,400 votes. There's 163,000 Latino youth that have turned 18 in that state alone. So when you're trying to figure out where do you want your resources to go, identify organizations that are focused specifically on low propensity voters, because campaigns don't talk to people who have voted less than 2 times, but they will make the difference because by default, young people have voted less than 2 times. And focus on organizations that are literally growing that electoral base, that are telling people that democracy is not icky, but that it's incredibly effective the moment they jump in. Because once you convince a young person that they can change the world, not only do they start voting, but then they start running for office. Then they start changing our school board. But they need that hope. I can tell you since she went to the top of the ticket, we've now registered over 110,000 folks. 65% of them are under the age of 25, and 60% of them are women. They're seeing their power. But these organizations need sustainable volunteers and dollars to make it happen.
Thank you. Kerry, we have a debate to get to. Thank you all so much for being here. Another round of applause for our incredible panel. I want to thank everyone who appeared on the stage tonight. I want to thank you all for coming here. You are now part of the Time community. I want to thank our wonderful partners, Barbie, Deloitte, and Aura, for making tonight possible. Please, before you go, grab a cocktail, meet someone here you've not met before, and then we all have a debate to go watch. Have a wonderful night. Thank you very much.